everybody, welcome to Snyder's Inc. And today we got top 15. We got top 15 unsolved mysteries packed with unanswered questions. This is 45 minutes long, the video itself, so this will probably be over an hour. My apologies for the length, but this type of stuff is the stuff I live for. I love to do this shit. So we will get right into this, ladies and gentlemen. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, comment what you think down below. Let's go.
Number 15. Bennington Triangle. The Bennington Triangle was given its name by researcher and author Joseph Citro, who wrote a book and many articles on the disappearances and other unexplainable events that took place in the area. The triangle is located in southwestern Vermont and spans many miles of desolate woods surrounded only by ghost towns that declined in
Okay, so this is the triangle. I was thinking, I was like, wait, the only triangle thing I know about disappearance is Bermuda Triangle. This is one about forest, not ocean. The Bermuda one's all about a bunch of ocean, an ocean area. This one's just a forest area, which is a bunch of mysteries. A bunch of disappearances keep happening in it. Okay.
Population over the course of many years. The most notable incidents that happened in the triangle include 5 disappearances, which occurred from 1945 to 1950. Though there has been extensive investigation into each of the disappearances, none has been solved. Mitty Rivers, Paula Weldon, James Tedford, Paul Jepson, and Frida Langer all vanished while traveling through the area. Mitty Rivers was the first victim. The then 74-year-old was hunting with a group of 4 other men in the triangle when he wandered off and was never seen again. According to the others on the trip, Rivers was a talented hunter and hiker who loved the outdoors and knew his way around. Joe Luzon was traveling with Rivers, his father-in-law, in the early morning hours of November 12, 1945. The pair was scouting out new hunting spots when they reached a divide in the path. For some reason, Rivers decided they should split up. He said he was going to take a detour to examine the area, but that he would return to camp before lunchtime. Several hours went by and the group saw no sign of Rivers. They went out in search of their friend, but were only able to find a rifle cartridge that had fallen into a nearby creek. When law enforcement investigators searched the area a few days later, they concluded that the cartridge had likely fallen out of Rivers' pocket as he was leaning over the body of water. This was the only evidence ever uncovered in the case. Paula Weldon, the second victim, was only 18 years old when the supposedly cursed trail took her. Once again, people said that Weldon was an experienced hiker with a familiarity of the area she was visiting. On December 1st, 1946, an elderly couple saw...
These are old ones. This is from 1945 to 1950 that these disappearances happened. So over 70 years ago.
Weldon hiking along the trail just a few feet ahead of them. They said that they witnessed Weldon take a turn ahead of them on the path. Just a few seconds later, when they approached the spot they had seen her turn, she was already gone. They noted that it was strange how quickly she was out of sight. A thorough search failed to find any trace of Weldon. The third victim was James Tedford. Tedford was not in the same wooded area as the others when he vanished, but the location he disappeared from is still considered part of the Bennington Triangle. On December 1st, 1949, Tedford boarded a bus headed toward Bennington. Witnesses reported seeing him get on the bus, but when it reached its final destination, he was gone. It was unclear if he got off at an earlier stop and the other riders just didn't notice, or if he really just disappeared into thin air. His luggage was left on the rack of the bus, and some say this is a sign that he did not disembark of his own free will. The fourth and youngest victim was 8-year-old Paul Jepson, who went missing on October 12, 1950, while visiting a farm area near the Bennington Triangle with his mother. According to her report, she was feeding the pigs when she turned around and noticed her son was gone. Of course, a search was conducted, but once again nothing substantial was found. There are rumors that bloodhounds led investigators to an area in the woods right by where Weldon was last seen. This claim is unconfirmed, though. Finally, the reported victim in this mysterious series of disappearances was Frida Langer. Her case took place on October 28, 1950, only 16 days after young Jepson went missing. 53-year-old Langer and her cousin were out on a camping trip in the Bennington Triangle when the pair set off for a light hike. Along the way, Langer slipped and fell into a small body of water, but she was unharmed. She informed her cousin to just wait in the area while she went back to camp to change. After a while, her cousin became worried and returned to camp himself, where other family members remained, to find that Langer had apparently never returned. A search was arranged, but no trace of her was found for several months. Months later, Langer's body was sadly found 3.5 miles from their campsite in an area that had not been thoroughly searched because of...
So only one what happened to them, but only one body was found.
Its distance from where Langer and her cousin had been hiking. Because of the condition of Langer's remains, a cause of death could not be determined. To this day, these cases remain unsolved, and the events that occurred in the mysterious Bennington Triangle continue to perplex. Number 14. Kim Su Liut.
The triangle thing, okay, hold on. So it was 1945, 1950, it hadn't happened since. It was a serial killer. That's all it was. Just a serial killer. Now, I know that sounds ridiculous to say it was just a serial killer. But it's not the probably big thing that conspiracy theorists want it to be. It's just there was someone in that woods that was taking people's lives. And taking people. That's just all it was. Sorry, it's just what it was.
This cold case dates back nearly 40 years. In October 1984, a young woman named Kim Su Liut mysteriously vanished after leaving work on what had been an otherwise normal day. The then 21-year-old victim worked as a secretary at the cotton gin her father-in-law owned, a position she had held for several years. She was described as a star employee that worked hard and was always timely. On October 9, 1984, around 4:45 p.m., Liut's stepfather received an alarming phone call. The caller was a man who seemed to be changing his voice to make his tone lower and more ominous. The caller told the Liuts that he had abducted their daughter. According to reports, he said that Liut was not harmed at that time, but that if her parents didn't cooperate, they would be putting their daughter's well-being at risk.
You can never believe them, though, right? Because they say she's unharmed. But knowing thing, we've seen it before. One story is talking about the guy who, like, kidnapped a woman from a coffee shop and took her away and, he killed her before he even decided he was going to try to ransom money with her. Because he stitched her eyes open, and took a picture of her. And it's fucking weird. It's a weird-ass photo.
The alleged kidnapper informed the victim's parents that he would only release their daughter if he received a ransom. The call ended, and at first the parents didn't take it seriously. They stated that they thought it was a funny call, and likely part of a prank that Kim was pulling on them. She was known for her wild and sometimes dark sense of humor. Without much worry, the parents called Kim at work to debunk the call. However, Kim never answered. They said they called her multiple times to no avail. Finally, they grew worried and decided to visit her office. When they arrived, they found the place unlocked. There were textbooks and study supplies strewn on Kim's desk. It appeared as though she was in the middle of studying and left her materials behind. Her other belongings, including her purse and briefcase, had also been left behind. This was unusual for Kim, who always kept these items on her. The family couldn't find Kim despite their search efforts, and began reaching out to friends and co-workers, hoping someone might have seen her that day. However, day turned to evening, and the evening turned to night, as several silent hours passed without a word about Kim's possible location. Her parents and husband, now frantic with worry, finally contacted police and reported Kim as missing. When the investigation was opened, witness testimonies were collected and a brief timeline of events was sketched out. Investigators discovered that around 4:30 p.m. on the day Kim vanished, a customer came in for a product order they needed assistance with. This customer was a regular and had interacted with Kim frequently. They knew how Kim usually behaved and said that, during their exchange, nothing seemed out of the ordinary, and Kim was as upbeat as usual. As the customer was leaving, they saw Kim standing in the parking lot with two unidentified men. The trio surrounded a white sports car as they chatted. Judging from her body language and the way she appeared to be communicating with them, the customer inferred that Kim was annoyed or possibly even offended. However, she didn't seem to be showing any signs of fear or seem as though she believed herself to be in danger. 15 minutes after this witness left, the Liuts received an unsettling phone call. Around 5 p.m., before her parents arrived at the job looking for her, a customer came in for help and reported that Kim was nowhere to be found, but that the facility was empty and unlocked. Given this timeline of events, investigators estimated that Kim was abducted or vanished in the short time between being seen in the parking lot and her parents receiving the call, meaning the entire ordeal took place over just a few minutes. The following day, search teams were organized and set out to find any trace of Kim. A few days after this, Kim's parents received a letter at their home. It had no return address. The letter repeated what had been said in that mysterious phone call, demanding a ransom for Kim to be returned or she would be harmed. The kidnapper was demanding $250,000 for Kim's safe return.
Here's the part that confuses me, right? If you're the ransom person, you don't have a return place or a meet spot. How do you plan to get the money? What do you want them to do with the money? Because let's say they get you the money. If they don't know what to do to get the money to do with the money, you can't get it.
Kim's parents realized that the letter was written in Kim's handwriting, signaling not only that she was still alive, but that the person contacting them was, in fact, her kidnapper. Investigators ran tests on the letter, which was confirmed by an expert to be written.
I was just thinking, could it be possible that person who's calling is someone she knows? Like, she's just planning it to get money. Now, this could all switch, but this is just what I'm curious about.
By Kim, but with another person's writing on the outside of the envelope. However, this piece of evidence was not enough to direct investigators towards any suspect. Kim's husband, with whom she had a small child, was initially investigated, as the spouses of missing people often are, but was eventually cleared of any involvement. To this day, there have been no further developments in Kim's case, and her whereabouts remain a mystery.
Did they ever get the money? Like, this is an actual serious question I have. Did they ever send the money? Because if they sent the money, I think it is possible that Kim planned her own kidnapping. It sounds ridiculous, but it's happened before.
Number 13. Frederick Valentic. On October 21, 1978, a pilot radioed into air traffic control to report that he was being provoked by another aircraft in the otherwise clear sky. Within just a few moments, the call dropped. This was the last time anyone spoke to Frederick Valentic before he mysteriously vanished, along with his aircraft. It has been 44 years since the disappearance. Researchers and investigators remain baffled by the details that Valentic shared during his call. The reports that Valentic made to air traffic control have added to the confusion of his mysterious disappearance, giving rise to countless theories. However, the truth about his whereabouts and what happened that caused his disappearance has yet to be uncovered. At the time of his disappearance, Valentic had 150 hours of flying time under his belt and was considered a rookie pilot. Valentic wanted to become a commercial pilot, but didn't have the proper and extensive education required to be licensed. To gain what was necessary, he spent his spare time studying to pass his exams, which he ultimately failed 3 times. In addition to these setbacks, Valentic had a troubled history in the aviation field. He was involved in several accidents and was reported to frequently cut corners and break protocol whilst in the air. He once...
This guy's not the smartest pilot, is he? This guy literally broke protocol many times, take shortcuts, do all this stuff, and yet he's also the one that goes missing via suspicious circumstances.
Once flew into a controlled zone that was off limits, potentially putting himself and other pilots in harm's way. He also was known to fly directly into clouds, something that is considered dangerous, especially for a rookie pilot. According to his family, Valentic had a special interest in unidentified flying objects. He expressed on more than one occasion his fear that extraterrestrials were going to attack the Earth. This makes what happened on the day of his appearance all the more interesting. On Saturday, October 21, 1978, Valentic began a short flight in Australia at around 7 p.m. He made a call over the radio to Melbourne Air Traffic Control just about 5 minutes after lifting into the clear sky. He questioned if another aircraft was in the area because, he said, he saw something flying about 1,000 feet above him. Air Traffic Control was able to confirm that there were no other aircraft in that area. During the call, Valentic described a strange situation unfolding above him. He stated that the aircraft had 4 bright landing lights that helped the craft be more visible in the setting sunlight. The unknown craft was also traveling at high, unidentifiable speeds and seemed to be playing games with Valentic, according to his report. The craft circled the area above.
That's hilarious. To think in my head of the guy who's all after UFOs and unidentified flying objects just happens to be the one. That is hilarious.
Of him, and then set a course directly towards him at least 2 times before returning to circle above. The craft, as he described it, was metallic and shiny, with a glare bouncing off of it. Later in the call, Valentic added that a green light suddenly appeared on the craft. He went on to state that his own engine had begun to misbehave. The last audible words from Valentic on the transmission were ominous. "It's not an aircraft." A series of metallic scraping and crashing sounds were then heard over the radio before the transmission dropped. In the following days, an extensive land and sea search was conducted where Valentic was known to have been flying. Nothing was found, and the search was eventually called off. Sometime later, a fragment of aircraft with a serial number matching Valentic's flyer was found along the shore some miles away from where Valentic had been flying that day. This was the last update in the case of the missing aviator, and the nature of his disappearance remains unknown. Some say that Valentic had committed or simply lost control of his plane in the air due to his inexperience. Others say that he faked his death. Some, however, believe that the craft he reported seeing was from another world, and Valentic's fear of an extraterrestrial attack had come true.
I think the guy just probably lost control of the plane, and in the short time, decided he's weird. Maybe the guy likes to cause a little problems. Decided he was gonna just call saying about a flying object he couldn't figure out. And then lost control, and then it crashed.
Number 12. Lee Bradley Brown. Lee Bradley Brown was a British tourist that lost his life in 2011 while in police custody during a vacation to Dubai, United Arab Emirates. Brown passed away in a foreign prison cell only 6 days after being arrested under mysterious circumstances, and the details around his death remain unknown to this day. Brown, who made his living as a self-employed maintenance man, decided...
Let's dissect. So this guy was arrested for mysterious reasons. We don't... maybe it's not known why he was arrested, but he was arrested for some reason. Then 6 days after being arrested, just dies. And they won't say how he died, what caused his death, nothing. It's just a case with no questions, well, no answers to our questions.
Decided in early April of 2011 that he was going to take a spontaneous solo trip to Dubai. When he arrived, he checked into a luxurious hotel called the Burj Al Arab. On April 6, 2011, a hotel maid let herself into Brown's room. In her later reports, she explained to police that she thought the room was empty and was planning to clean it. She entered the room without knocking or announcing herself. It should also be noted that she wasn't wearing her work uniform and didn't have her ID card with her to prove who she was. Brown was...
Sorry, there was a cut there. I had to take a call because me and my friend had to talk about something. Alrighty, back to where we were doing.
Was startled by the woman entering his room and allegedly accused her of stealing, grabbed her and dragged her to the room's balcony while threatening to throw her over. Brown himself called for hotel security, claiming he caught the woman stealing. After the woman was pulled away to safety, staff called an ambulance and the police. The housekeeper needed minor medical attention for her injuries, but was not seriously harmed. Brown was arrested, despite declaring his innocence. He insisted to police that he thought the woman was trying to steal from him. Officers said that Brown resisted arrest and was throwing his body around the hotel room. He allegedly banged his head and slammed his body against the walls, and continued to throw himself against the screen separating him from the officers in the police car. Brown was taken to prison where the booking process began.
I mean, okay, let's see here. Let's dissect this. So this woman, who's a maid, walks right up into this man's room. She doesn't know someone's in there, which is fine, but she still walks up in there. She doesn't have anything to identify who she is, which I think is stupid. She should always have something on her in case a mistake like this happens. They'll be like, "Who are you?" Like, "Hey, I'm just a maid. Like, I work here." So that's fine. However, he took this to an intense level it didn't need to get. One, he claims he saw her stealing. If she didn't actually steal anything, I don't know why you jumped to that accusation. Why you're jumping to say she did. It's not, oh, you could be stealing something. I think you're here, like, why are you in here? You're trying to steal. The thing is, I saw her steal something. That's not true. So why are you going to that conclusion? 2, I don't care if she caught you stealing. She is a woman. You are a man. You do not need to threaten to throw her off a balcony. You don't need to go that far. That part doesn't need to happen. Stupid. Well, I understand him saying I'm innocent. I actually thought you were stealing. You did take it a little bit, a bit intense. I'm just saying.
And, despite his alleged earlier behavior, he was described by the booking officer as calm and in good health. At the station, he was charged with intimidating behavior and using abusive language. At first, Brown was placed in a...
Using abusive language? What do you mean? What did he say? What exactly did he say that you charged him with? I am fascinated by this one. What did he say that you charged him with for offensive language? Did he say fuck? Is that what he did? Did he say fuck you and you were so offended? Listen, it sounds ridiculous. I have had an officer get aggressive to me once and like slam me to the ground because I told him to fuck off. There were police with small egos. Well, not small, with big egos. And small pride. Small amount of pride. And they try to use their position of power to bully people around. And when you say a little offensive thing to them. And then people are going, oh, you can't say things to police. You can't say things that. You can have... Those same people care about freedom of speech. You can't have freedom of speech and say you can say, do whatever you want, but then you can't say anything to these people. That's not how freedom of speech works. I'm a person behind freedom of speech. I believe anyone has the right to say whatever they want. You do. So, that concludes the police. That concludes whoever. You have the right to say whatever you want to them. That's freedom of speech. If you don't want freedom of speech, that's fucking fine. But don't try to defend it if you don't actually want.
Cell with other inmates, with whom he was said to have been getting along well with. However, after a trip to court, he returned having apparently been severely and was placed in solitary confinement. It was here that Brown died. Officials claimed initially that Brown's injuries were the result of altercations with other inmates, and they claimed that they would release CCTV footage backing this account. However, this footage has never been released. Over time,
because it doesn't exist. That's why it's never been released. It doesn't exist. They don't have footage of this.
The story changed, with officials later claiming that Brown had caused the injuries to himself by throwing himself on the ground and against the walls of his cell. An autopsy report released by Dubai officials claimed that Brown had died as a result of vomit blocking his airway. However, the British coroner's office found that there was no evidence of vomit in his airways whatsoever. Some of Brown's fellow inmates reported violent treatment at the hands of the guards, but police still claim.
So this is a scenario where Dubai people, the Dubai police and Dubai fucking coroner and all that, might just be straight full of shit. They might be full of shit with this one.
Claim that they had nothing to do with his death. The conflicting reports and various stories means the truth around Lee Bradley Brown's death remains a mystery. Number 11. Kelly Hopkinsville encounter. The last thing you'd expect in a tale about an extraterrestrial encounter might be a shootout, but that may have been exactly what happened during the Kelly Hopkinsville extraterrestrial encounter in Kentucky. In August 1955, the Suttons were a farming family living in the countryside in Christian County, Kentucky. There's a great deal of debate among the public around unidentified flying objects and extraterrestrial encounters. Though many scientists agree about the likelihood of extraterrestrial life, they are divided as to whether we would have encountered any of them here on Earth. Some professional ufologists regard the incident as significant as far as encounters go.
Here's what I've always wondered. Why would you, extraterrestrials want to visit us? They're ahead of us in every form. Technology-wise, building-wise, everything. What would they want from us now? What would we have that they would want? They won't even look at. That's what I'm always confused with.
Despite there having been no outside witnesses and no photographic evidence of the incident, skeptics tend to argue that the family experienced something like mass hysteria, where adrenaline and confusion informed what they claimed to have witnessed. In the beginning stages of the investigation, there was some speculation that the adults in the Sutton family may have had their judgment impaired by alcohol. However, the family claimed that no drinking had occurred that night. Furthermore, the children in the family also claimed to have witnessed the encounter. Another skeptic theory is that the Suttons were actually just seeing a number of owls on their property based on the witness descriptions of what was seen that night. The witnesses, around 12 members of the Sutton family and some friends who were traveling carnival workers, arrived at the county police station late in the evening on August 21st of 1955. They said that they had been involved in a shootout with unknown creatures for over 4 hours. The creatures were allegedly very short, no bigger than about 2 feet tall, with dark bodies, long arms, horned heads, and...
Interesting. Usually, alien stories don't have them as short. They're usually always super tall. You know, they're 9-10 feet tall, because they gotta be insane compared to us. This is the other one with a short.
glowing eyes. They also appeared to have had claw-like hands and feet.
Why the hell does this look like the alien from a fucking Phineas and Ferb show? This looks like meat from Phineas and Ferb. That's what this looks like.
Witnesses said that they fired at about 10 to 15 creatures that were trying to enter the home and attack the children. The station quickly put together a team of investigators and professionals to search the property. Apparently, all they could find was proof of the one-sided gunfire and the damage it caused. There was no trace of any unknown creatures.
I'm more curious what this police thought. They're just like, these guys just lost their minds. Just like shooting and nothing. Fucking caused a bunch of freaking destruction and just shot at absolutely nothing.
Running around. After that initial investigation concluded, around 3:30 a.m. that same night, neighbors reported that the family packed up and fled their farm after what they describe as the creature's return. This event continues to lead to speculation and theories to this day. Number 10. The Watcher House. The mysterious case of the Watcher House was...
Oh, this one is weird. This one's weird. I don't even want to... This is one I want a conclusion for, but I also don't. Because it's one of those cases that has so much mystery to it that I almost want it to remain unsolved. You ever had those? You know those cases. You ever seen those true crime or paranormal cases, mainly true crime cases, where you just don't want the answers revealed. You just want to leave it. Let it exist. That's what the Watcher is. That and Jack the Ripper. They're the two things that I'm like, I'm fine if they never get solved. Let them just be surrounded in mystery.
So disturbing, it even inspired an eerie Netflix series. The story follows a family who, after happily purchasing a new home in 2014, would wind up living in fear through years of stalking and harassment. The couple, Derek and Maria Broaddus, along with their 3 children, actually never lived in the house they purchased, because as soon as the deed was in their hands, the nightmare began. It was love at first sight for Derek and Maria when they first spotted the $1.3 million home located on 657 Boulevard in Westfield, New Jersey. They immediately imagined living a peaceful life and raising their family on the property, which seemed to suit their family perfectly. The neighborhood was known to be safe and neighbors were said to get along well. It seemed perfect. There were no apparent issues with the home and no problems in the area. The house did need some remodeling as it was quite old, but Derek and Maria were even excited for this aspect as they were looking forward to personalizing their home. After they closed on their dream house, a few days before the Broaddus family made their move, Derek found a letter in the mailbox. It was addressed to the owner, but it had no return address. It's unclear if the letter was mailed or simply dropped in the box. Either way, the contents of the letter were immediately unsettling. The letter started off completely normal and even polite, welcoming the family to the neighborhood. It quickly took a turn, though, when the writer began to describe their own obsession with the home. They stated that, for generations, their family had watched the lovely house as if they were drawn to it. The writer went on to question how the family came to own the home. If it weren't for the general tone of the letter, this might come across as innocent curiosity. However, it quickly became clear that this was more of a threat than a warm welcome.
It's a very bizarre thing, isn't it? Like, you're a dude. I'm pretty sure this is the dude. I'm just gonna assume it's a dude. You're a dude who just has this obsession with this house. Maybe he's always wanted to live in it. Some reason. Always wanted to live in that house, but can't afford that house. He's just obsessed with it. So anytime a family moves in, you try to threaten to get them out. Maybe it gets abandoned. You're hoping. So you can live in it. Maybe you hope the price goes down on it. So you can afford it. Something like that. That's what I think this is. Maybe something like that. Because I can see no reasons why someone would be obsessed with this house for no reason.
Part of the letter said, 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches its 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out. The writer went on to threaten the family, even their children. They said that they would lure the children to them, and
will the young blood play in the basement? Are you too afraid to go down them alone? I would be very afraid if I were them. It was far away from the rest of the house. If you were upstairs, you would never hear them scream. Fucking hell.
that the family should consider themselves in danger. According to a report by thecut.com, Derek was alone in the home when he received the letter, and instantly after reading it, he turned every light in the house off and called the police. Officers arrived and agreed the letters were a serious matter, but they couldn't do much with the little information they had.
That's fair. That's fair. They're like, listen, we agree, this is fucking serious, but what the fuck can we do with this? Like, just letters. There's nothing that gives away who it is. There's nothing to this. There's just a bunch of letters. It's a dangerous thing, and they're making dangerous steps. But unfortunately, what could they do, really?
Derek went back to his old home that night to be with his family. In the following days, more letters started to show up, and the family finally took it upon themselves to interview the previous owners. That couple, who had lived in the home for 23 years, said they only ever received one letter like that just before they moved out. They didn't think much of it, so they threw it out. The letters, always signed off as the Watcher, continued to arrive at the house.
So it's almost like the Watcher is either the previous owners or it's for some reason, whoever this Watcher is accepted that family that was in there before. But once they moved out, he didn't accept this one.
Elaborating upon the threats to the family and the author's obsession with the home. The family, now stricken with fear and paranoia, ended up never moving into the new home. In 2019, they were finally able to sell the house again and decided to start over somewhere new. To this day, the Watcher has not been identified, and it's unclear if any new owners have received such threats. Number 9. Dover Demon. The case of the Dover Demon still baffles and fascinates people even 45 years after its original sighting.
I don't know this one at all.
The unknown creature got its name from the town where it was spotted, Dover, Massachusetts. There were 3 separate sightings reported, which took place over the course of about 25 hours. On April 21, 1977, 17-year-old Bill Bartlett was the first to witness the creature. While traveling down a dark farm road that night around 10:30 p.m., He reported seeing what he initially thought was an animal near the side of the road. According to his first account, it stood in place for about 8 seconds before it leapt away into the wooded area along the road. Bartlett questioned the other teens in the car, asking if they had seen what he had just witnessed, but he was the only one. Later, Bartlett sketched out a photo of what he saw to take to the police. The creature was standing on all fours and had a short body, small feet, long dangling arms, scrawny long fingers, shark-like skin, and large eyes that appeared to glow orange. The second witness to come forward about the creature was 15-year-old John Baxter. Baxter was walking down the same dark road just 2 hours after Bartlett's experience when he was stopped in his tracks by a dark figure approaching him. He stated that the creature was rather short, but it walked and stood like a disproportionate human. It had a large head, long dangling arms, and fingers similar to those described by Bartlett. It also had a pair of glowing eyes, but they were colorless, unlike Bartlett's description. The pair continued to walk toward one another, but the creature eventually stopped before getting too close and ran over a gully toward a wooded area. The third and final witness of the supposed demon was 15-year-old Abby Brabham. 24 hours after the initial sighting,
Is it just a coincidence that they're all like 15 to 17 years old? Only them? Is it just a coincidence of that, I guess? 'Cause that's a little sus to me.
she was driving on a nearby road when she noticed the creature ahead of her. Her description was similar to the others. The only variation was that its eyes seemed to be glowing green. When investigators planned out a map of the sightings, it showed the creature popping up in a straight line along the roadway, a few miles apart. Though many people do not believe in the existence of cryptids, demons, or extraterrestrials, it is unusual that 3 people should report such similar mysterious sightings along the same road in such a short period of time. Police took the reports seriously because each witness described something very similar. Furthermore, the teens were not said to know each other, so it's unlikely that they plotted the reports as some kind of prank.
Okay, so that helps it. That helps a little bit, because I was sitting there going, like, they're 15 to 17-year-old. They probably know each other. They probably know each other and just happened to, and then they decided to just do this. But since if it's proven none of them know each other, then yeah, it's very, very weird. They all pointed out the exact same thing and designed it the exact same way.
To this day, there have been no further sightings of the Dover Demon, and its presence on that April day remains a mystery. Number 8. Pamela Hupp and Shirley Newman. Pamela Marie Hupp is a convicted American killer currently serving a life sentence for the murders of Betsy Faria in 2011 and Louis Gumpenberger in 2016. These 2 cases have been the focus of immense media coverage since Hupp's story began to unravel. Though it has been proven that Hupp was responsible for both deaths, with the apparent motive being financial gain, there is a third case she may be related to that is discussed less frequently and for which she has never been charged. Many believe that Hupp was responsible for the passing of her own mother, a death that she, like the others she has been convicted of, stood to benefit from financially. Upon their mother's death, Hupp and her siblings inherited a sum of money from Shirley Newman's estate. A life insurance policy was also split amongst the family. In an interview a few months before her mother's accident, Hupp stated that she had an easy way to make money if she wanted to. She mentioned that she could fight off someone weaker than her to get what she wanted. Such a cold-blooded statement is unusual in any context, but made all the more chilling with the events that took place around Newman's death. Newman was a resident of an assisted living community for older adults when she died. She suffered from dementia and arthritis, and depended on others for most daily tasks. In October, Newman spent some time in the hospital for an unknown illness. When she was released, Hupp picked her up and they spent the day together. When Hupp dropped off her mother and took her up to her third-floor room, none of the staff were alarmed. Hupp did, however, inform the employees that her mother wouldn't be attending dinner that night. The following day, Newman failed to answer her phone or open her door for staff members. A few hours later, security found her body under the balcony of her apartment. The railing on her balcony seemed to have been damaged. At first glance, it looked like Newman died as a result of an accidental fall. An autopsy showed that blunt force trauma on Newman's chest was the cause of death, and an accident.
How wasn't she charged for this? That is probably the most easiest dice of who you choose. That is probably the easiest one I've ever seen. That seems so easy. She was the last one to see her alive. Took her in, happened to tell us that, hey, she ain't gonna be joining for anything. She's gonna be, gone for the night. She's gonna be asleep for the night. She's gonna be, so no one would check up on her. No one would be weird, find it unexpected she's not there. She's already dead. So then they find her thing and they just she made it look like an accidental fall. I mean, how is her daughter not charged here?
Accidental fall could have been the culprit. However, it was also discovered that Newman had a copious amount of sedative in her system. She had at least 8 times the usual dose in her bloodstream. Although this amount wasn't enough to cause an overdose, it did raise a red flag as to how and why Newman was able to obtain and abuse the medication. Investigators tried to pursue the case as a homicide, especially after Hupp was convicted of 2 other deaths. However, they were refused evidence from the scene or warrants to search the apartment. They also were denied the chance to interview Hupp about the case. One homicide detective did see that the railing on the apartment porch seemed to have been kicked in by force, and it did not seem possible that the weight of a small elderly woman would bend it. This led another...
Wait, why won't they let them look this one? Why won't the judge and anything let them this case be looked at more? I don't get that. Why wouldn't you want this to be proven? Like, why wouldn't you want it done? Is your thought, well, she's already in jail, so fuck it, leave it.
The coroner to rule the cause of Newman's death undetermined, as opposed to the result of an accident. Did Pamela Hupp get away with murdering her mother?
Yes, she did, 100%.
Number 7. Ghost mail. Upstate New...
I wouldn't say she got away with it, because she's not out and about. She's still in jail, but for some weird reason, I guess the judge wants the police to stop working for some reason.
New York resident Carol Hover checked her mail as usual one day in April of 2022. As she was sifting through the usual pile of bills and ads, she came across something quite peculiar. In her hand, she held a postcard from her mother. She explained when interviewed that she immediately knew her mother's handwriting. Obviously, receiving a letter from your mom doesn't sound very strange or unusual, but Hover's mother passed away in 2014, making the letter's arrival a bit haunting. Hover wondered if something supernatural was going on. Was she being written to by the ghost of her mother? Upon further inspection, Hover noticed that the letter had come from Canada and was dated 1960, meaning that it was written during her parents' honeymoon. Completely confused by the mail's arrival, Hover took it upon herself to visit her city post office to hopefully get some answers about her ghost mail. After explaining the situation, the post office employees were completely shocked and informed her that they actually had a few more letters in the back from her mother. They brought them out, but they couldn't explain how the mail arrived at their facility or why they were just now being sent out. Although there were possible logical explanations, employees stood by their claims that the letters were mysterious and their arrival was eerie. This wasn't the end of the story, though. Hover went on to receive several more letters that came from various countries around the world and were sent out in the 1960s and 70s. To make the ordeal even more strange, Hover wasn't the only one to receive the mysterious deliveries. She shared that a letter was also sent to her cousin's former family home in Minnesota. The letter was addressed to her aunt and uncle and was dated 1983. Although they reached out to the post office and tried to investigate the sources of the letters being delivered so long after they were postmarked, the reason these ghost letters showed up so long after they were written remains a mystery. While to some the prospect of any kind of supernatural contact might be scary, Hover and her cousin said they found some comfort in the letters, as though their loved ones were sending sweet messages from beyond the grave. Number 6. John P. Wheeler III. The body of 66-year-old John P. Wheeler III, better known as Jack Wheeler, was found in a landfill on December 31, 2010, and the details of his mysterious demise are still unknown after 13 years. Wheeler was described as a loving father and husband, a hard worker, and a man with a passion for politics. Wheeler came from a family of military professionals and decided to follow in their footsteps by joining the United States Military Academy, graduating in 1966. Wheeler went on to study at Harvard Business School and worked as a systems analyst over the summer for the Office of the Secretary of Defense, before embarking on a long and storied career in politics and government. He spent time as the chairman of the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Fund, was a senior planner at Amtrak, and served as the CEO of Mothers Against Drunk Driving, among other high-ranking positions in prominent agencies. He was even for a time on the general staff at the Pentagon. Wheeler was also a presidential aide to Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, and George W. Bush. These roles put Wheeler in a position to meet the highest-ranking members of government. He was also alleged to have had access to sensitive information related to his roles. Some people think that this access to classified information might play a role in eventually uncovering what led to his disappearance. When investigators arrived at the scene where Wheeler's body was found, they already knew they were facing a tough case. However, they weren't prepared for the peculiar actions Wheeler took in the days and hours leading up to his death. CCTV footage showed Wheeler acting strangely, and after observing the clips, his wife reflected that her husband appeared to be behaving as though he were afraid. Others claim that he appears to be having a psychotic break or even experiencing symptoms of dementia. The first CCTV clip was captured on the 28th of December, which is the day Wheeler was last seen alive. It showed him walking into a pharmacy around 6 p.m. that evening. The employee remembered that he had asked them for a ride to the Wilmington train station, which was just a short drive away. When he couldn't find anyone who was willing to drive him, he left the store without a fuss. Later that same day, a security camera in a parking garage in the city caught Wheeler walking around aimlessly, with one shoe in his hand and no coat or jacket. Despite the freezing temperatures, he was also observed to be limping, with a seemingly injured leg. His appearance was disheveled, and it looked as though he was in distress.
Yeah, he looks weird in this. He looks like he doesn't know what's going on or what he is or what he's doing. It's very bizarre. It's very bizarre here.
He approached an employee of the parking garage, asking for help finding his car. He also mentioned a seemingly random detail to the employee, that his briefcase has been stolen. Though investigators have tried to track it down, the briefcase was never found. Some theorize that Wheeler may have been in possession of confidential files and government materials. Perhaps, they speculate, he was attacked by a bad actor hoping to get their hands on those documents. Autopsy showed that Wheeler had passed due to blunt force trauma. His system was also clean of drugs and alcohol. This dismissed claims that Wheeler's erratic behavior may have been a result of him being under the influence. His wife later shared in an interview that when she was finally allowed to see her husband, she noticed on his face, as though he had been in a fight. Although it was not publicly confirmed by investigators, she assumed that his more serious were on his covered torso. It was assumed that Wheeler had somehow ended up in a dumpster, either before or after he died, and was picked up by trash collectors who never noticed a human body was in with their usual load. Investigators were unable to determine where or when Wheeler's body was picked up by the garbage truck that eventually deposited him at the landfill where he was found. So due to lack of evidence, the case ran cold. Number 5. Isdal Woman. About 53 years ago, on November 29, 1970, the body of a woman was found in a wooded region in Bergen, Norway. The stretch of nature is called the Isdalen Valley, also known as the Ice Valley or the Death Valley. A family was walking along a trail in Isdalen when they caught a whiff of a strange smell. At first they were confused, but they eventually identified the scent as smoke from a fire or burning meat. Following the scent, one of the daughters came across a body laid over a pile of rocks. The body was badly charred and smoke was still emitting from her body. The father rushed to get his family away from the scene to protect his children from witnessing the horror any further. He then went straight to local police to report what he had found. Investigators were met with a harrowing scene when they arrived. The victim's body was badly and her face was mostly ash, making her difficult to identify. Oddly enough, the back of her body was mostly untouched by the flames. This implied that the woman was set up while she was lying on her back, but it was unclear where the fire had been set. There were a number of items near the body, including clothing, a pair of rubber boots, a scarf, a plastic bottle, an umbrella, a plastic passport container, an empty liquor bottle, 2 earrings, and a ring. There were traces of burned paper around the body, and underneath it, there was a fur hat, which was found to have traces of gasoline on it. Any labels and identifying marks had been deliberately removed from these items. With no means of identifying the victim, which had been nicknamed the Isdal Woman, the body was sent in for an autopsy. The medical examiner found that her fingerprints had been sanded off, likely in an attempt to further prevent police from unveiling her identity. Soot was found in the woman's lungs, which led to the conclusion that she had been while she was still alive. Her blood work showed that she had taken about 50 to 70 sleeping pills, but they had not been digested enough to be her cause of death. She also had a significant bruise on her neck. A few days after the Isdal woman was found, investigators received a tip about abandoned luggage at the nearby railway station. They obtained 2 suitcases and were able to link them to the victim. The bag's contents included various outfits, shoes, makeup items, money and coins in different currencies, maps, timetables, and a notepad with coded writing. Professionals were able to decode the writing and found that it was a log of the places the woman had visited. Using this map and documents from hotels across the region, it was confirmed that she frequently switched between 8 different identities using fake IDs and passports. The woman was never truly identified, and the circumstances of her passing are the subject of much debate and speculation. While some believe she may have been running from something, others theorize that she was a spy killed off by an opposing force. Number 4. The Kentucky...
Both are possible. Both are possible there.
Kentucky meat shower. On March 3rd, 1876,
This one's old. 1876. Woo! That's an oldie.
ranchers and farmers in Rankin, Kentucky were waking up in preparation for a day like any other. As spring was approaching, the weather was clear and sunny. There were no threats of storms on their way, so citizens of the countryside weren't expecting rain to interrupt their work that day. Strangely enough, though, there did come a downpour between 11 a.m. and 12 p.m. It only lasted a few minutes as residents hurried to their porches to avoid what was raining down. The sky was still clear and devoid of heavy clouds, but that's not what made this event so puzzling. Instead of rainwater falling from the sky, chunks of meat were plummeting to the ground all over the countryside. Although this may sound hard to...
You're lying. You're lying to me, Dean. You are lying to... You are lying to me right now, and I do not appreciate it. You are lying to me. There was not a case going around of a time where meat was raining down from the sky. That is not a thing that happened. You are lying to me, and I will not appreciate it. I do not be lying to me on the YouTube, okay? You do not lie to me. Don't lie to me now.
To believe it actually did happen. There were many witnesses from the area that came forward after the storm to report on their version of events and help investigators determine the cause of the mysterious storm. A woman known only as Mrs. Crouch and her husband were amongst the first witnesses to report what they experienced. Mrs. Crouch explained that she was working on her porch when the storm began. According to her, a strong gust of wind blew over the area, and a few seconds later, chunks of meat began to slam to the ground.
No, they didn't. This is not true. I refuse to believe this is an actual thing. I refuse. I refuse. I don't care what someone tells me. There was no way you will convince me this happened.
The couple provided researchers with samples of the meat from their property. They also shared that they believed the incident was a sign from God and perhaps a prediction of the end times. This is just one of countless theories that have been brought...
Oh no! Oh no! It's raining T-bone steaks. That's it. The world is doomed. Oh no, the roast beef too. We're all screwed.
Up over the last century and a half regarding the strange storm. After conducting more interviews and thoroughly searching the area, investigators found that the meat covered over 100 yards of land, with meat thrown across fields, along fences, and even on house roofs. 2 men from town visited residents in the area to obtain samples of the meat, which they cooked for a taste test. It was originally assumed that the meat was something like beef, but these cooks argued that the flavor and texture of the meat was more reminiscent of deer or mutton. The story of the Great Kentucky Meat Shower was picked up by the media and made the headlines for several months following the event. As the story's popularity grew, so did the number of theories surrounding it. One scientist named Leopold Brandeis speculated that the meat wasn't actually meat at all. Instead, he suggested that the material was more likely nostoc, which is a type of bacteria that swells into a heavy, goopy substance when wet. It didn't take long for this theory to be shot down. Author and researcher Charles...
I refuse to believe it's meat. I'll take anything. I'll take it's a bacteria falling than a fucking meat. Ain't gonna convince me that some damn T-bone steak, some fucking pork ribs and some shit. I was just fucking baby back ribs just start falling down. You ain't gonna do it. No way.
Fort made the simple observation that there was no rain on that day to wet the substance. A sample of the meat was sent to a medical examiner, Dr. Alan McLean Hamilton. His studies showed that portions of the meat were confirmed to be lung tissue from either a horse or a human baby. This was shocking, of course, but since the original source could never be confirmed, it lived on as just another theory. To this day, the explanation of the Kentucky meat shower is completely unknown.
It's not a thing. I refuse to believe it.
Number 3. The Black Flash of Provincetown. The tight-knit small town of Provincetown, Massachusetts was terrorized by an entity in late 1939. The supposed monster that found its way into the headlines for several months had a number of dramatic names. It was referred to variously as the Provincetown Phantom and the Devil of the Dunes. However, its most commonly used title was the Black Flash, which referenced its dark appearance and reported super speed. A group of children walking through their neighborhood one dark night were the first witnesses to cross paths with the Black Flash. The entity jumped out onto the sidewalk from a bushy area, far from streetlights. The children immediately ran home after their encounter, filled with fear and confusion. According to the group, the creature produced a screeching sound similar to a banshee. It went on to chase after them, but only for a few short seconds. They recollected that a maniacal, bestial laugh echoed from the monster. When the children were questioned by their parents, they all had the same exact story with identical details. While children are known to have wild imaginations, it would be difficult for them to have all made the same report with identical details if there hadn't been some truth to their story. The children's description of the creature's appearance was truly haunting. According to their description, it had 2 glowing silver eyes, but no other details were visible in its face. The rest of its body was pitch black as well. It was humanoid but abnormally tall, and had long, thin arms that hung below its knees. The young witnesses also stated that it exhibited an unbelievable superhuman speed. One child said that it was probably faster than a car. After this initial incident, reports of the Black Flash continued from one end of town to another. Most of these reports came from children. Some shared that the creature jumped out and chased them, like the first group reported. Others stated that they witnessed the Black Flash rummaging through garbage, standing along the side of empty dirt roads at night, or even attacking small animals. Eventually, reports started to pop up from adults as well. One woman, Marie Costa, recalled her experience with the entity from a few days after the first children made their statements. According to her story, she was walking near the town hall one night after a day of errands when she passed an area of bushes near the entrance to a dark alley. The Black Flash lunged out of hiding and tried to grab Marie while screeching and growling. She was able to escape his grasp and ran to a late-night cafe. While employees of the cafe comforted Marie, a group of men gathered to hunt down the Black Flash. However, their search proved fruitless. The allegedly supernatural being was never captured. Over time, sightings began to decrease and fear settled down, but horror stories about the Phantom continued to be passed down for generations and remain a part of Provincetown's memory to this day. Number 2. The Hornet Spook Light. In 1936, reports began to flood into local law enforcement and media publications of a strange light being that had been sighted near the border between Missouri and Oklahoma. These occurrences took place a few miles west of Hornet, Missouri. Therefore, the light was named the Hornet Spook Light, or more simply, the Spook Light. The 1936 sightings were the first officially recorded reports of the sightings, but the history might date back as far as the 1830s. Back then, reports of the flash were shared by word of mouth, warning wanderers to stay away from the light. Some versions of those stories reported that 2 young Native American men were walking along what is now a wooded path when they were hunted down and attacked, and it is their ghosts or spirits that can be seen casting the mysterious light. However, these early stories cannot be confirmed. In the early 1940s, just a few years after the first documented reports,
this is just a light people see, and this light just has a whole backstory and theories just on what this light is.
Residents of the area and surrounding towns began to advocate that local and federal government agencies provide more funding and resources towards studying the light. This was because sightings were experienced in other areas of town, including near hiking trails and over farmlands. Residents were worried that the strange light might be dangerous and even evidence of supernatural or extraterrestrial presence. Finally, after countless letters, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers visited the town and planned out an investigation. Despite months of work, the professionals failed to come any closer to solving the mystery and providing answers. The spook light is described as a large ball or orb that hovers above the tree lines, moving very slowly. The light has most commonly been described as yellow, red, and orange, but there are a handful of accounts in which witnesses describe the light as a bright green or deep blue. Another intriguing detail about the light is that, according to some, you must remain completely silent while waiting to see the show, because apparently excessive noise of any kind will scare off the spectacle. Most reports are similar in detail, which some say disproves the assumption that people are just imagining the mysterious lights. However, most skeptics believe that the spook light is actually the reflection of distant car headlights.
It probably could be. That probably is the case, in all honesty.
Number 1. Curtis Eccleston. In February 2011, an Air Force technical agent named Curtis Eccleston was killed by an unknown attacker inside his own home. Eccleston's friend and fellow serviceman visited his apartment in Okinawa, Japan, after failing to hear from him for an extended period. The friend was able to enter after finding that the front door was unlocked. However, he had not anticipated walking into a horror scene. The apartment was spattered with blood and in complete disarray. The police were called, and along with them, NCIS became involved. According to several officers that visited the crime scene, it was one of the most gruesome scenes they had seen in their careers. It was obvious that whoever was responsible for this attack did so with hate and aggression. After assessing the crime scene, investigators sought possible witnesses and broadened their search for evidence. As is common in murder and disappearance cases, the first person questioned was Eccleston's spouse, his wife, Barbara. Apparently, her friends and family also had a hard time trying to contact her the day of his death. There were concerns that she was potentially home at the time of the attack and had been kidnapped, or her body had been dumped elsewhere by the murderer. She was difficult to track down, but investigators finally got in contact with her and told her what had happened to her husband. While investigators were busy with Barbara, Eccleston's remains were sent in for an autopsy. He had been stabbed many times, with knife wounds all over his body. The medical examiner was able to piece together what most likely happened to the victim.
So this was a violent attack over just a military guy. Probably either from his wife or just some random person who just knew he was military and decided he just didn't like military people, so he was gonna take him out. Which is fucked up.
It appeared as though he was attacked in the kitchen by a killer wielding a large knife. He had defensive wounds on his arms, suggesting he tried to block the blows. Eventually, he was overcome and fell to the ground. However, the brutal attack did not stop there. The killer continued to stab Eccleston even after he fell unconscious. Some of the wounds on Eccleston's body had been inflicted anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours.
How bad is YouTube's monetization thing where the word wounds is censored to such a degree that they have to do it every time?
Hours after he had died. When investigators relayed all of this to Barbara, she showed no signs of surprise or confusion. Eccleston and Barbara were on the verge of divorce after she was caught having an affair. When questioned, Barbara stated that she was concerned Eccleston had been murdered because he had been involved in drug trafficking. Large sums of cash and baggies of assorted drugs were hidden throughout the house, she claimed. Investigators followed up on such reports but found no traces of those items in their home. There was also no other evidence, witnesses, or even rumors to back up what the widow was reporting, though Barbara...
Oh, it's definitely the wife then. Thank you. That's definitely the wife. The wife knows definitely what happened there.
...seemed a likely suspect. There was simply not enough evidence to take her to trial, and the murder of Eccleston remains officially unsolved.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for this reaction video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Thank you all for watching. I'll see y'all for the next one.